Apple Bloom screamed and clambered to her hooves as the memory wrenched itself from her. Frantically, her forehooves went right for her neck, expecting a giant hole. Her breathing was labored and deep, and her little heart raced faster than it ever had before. She tried to look away from the bones, but her eyes refused to move. All she could see was the red of the fire, the burning lies, and the poor pony that had been murdered in this edifice. Her little game of detective had taken a hideous turn, and Apple Bloom wanted desperately to stop playing. She ran, bursting out into the woods and galloping toward town. She had to tell some pony, even if they ignored her. She had to find some pony, any pony who would listen even a bit. Surely some pony would listen. Apple Bloom slowed as she rounded the curve in the path that led back to town. The glow from the lanterns was extinguished, leaving only more darkness ahead. How did they manage to put out all the lights so quickly? It didn't bode well. Apple Bloom hesitated. Before her was a pitch-black unknown, but behind her was a mausoleum and a dead end. She had nowhere else to go but back into town. The thick stench of blight overwhelmed Apple Bloom's senses as she passed through the trees into Sunnytown. The name was now a horrible choice. Every single building and structure looked collapsed and decaying. The soft grass had been replaced with hard dirt and sticky mud. What was left of the party decorations looked ancient and riddled with rot. Apple Bloom stood perfectly still. Everything around her was quiet. She slowly trotted forward, weaving her way through the dilapidated town and avoiding the mud patches. Apple Bloom peered into one of the collapsed homes as she passed it. Nothing but rubble. Then, a frightening voice growled out and shattered the silence.
There was no other way. She would have infected the whole town. We couldn't have that.
Apple Bloom looked all around her from where she was standing, but no pony was there. Where did that voice come from? She continued forward, fear beginning to rise inside of her. She rounded the bend deeper into town when another noise reached her. It sounded like roots tearing. She turned in the direction it was coming from, realizing it was over by where Three Leaf originally sat. Apple Bloom approached the noise, the sound getting louder and mixing with the scrapes of tilling earth. She stopped dead as a grime-covered hoof erupted from the ground, pulling with it a macabre shamble of bones, sinew, and rot. Apple Bloom wanted to scream, but the sight kept her rooted in place, silent. The figure took the shape of a pony. Only it wasn't. It shambled forward with a lurching motion, stopping a few feet away from the filly. The creature looked down toward Apple Bloom, staring at her with empty eye sockets. A red light began to rise in the monster's vacant skull as it opened its mouth.
The curse mark. It befell her this very night.
The zombie spoke with an unnatural echo in its voice. Apple Bloom took a step closer, looking at its features. The thing still had a small amount of its mane left. It was a dark green color.
Three Leaf?
Apple Bloom managed to squeak out. What remained of the zombie pony's jaw wobbled, forming a hellish sneer. The empty glowing sockets drilled into Apple Bloom.
That's right.
What happened here?
Apple Bloom yelped, unsure if it was wise to chat with the zombie. Three Leaf stood silent for what seemed like an eternity before answering.
She had the mark. She had to go.
You ponies killed an innocent mare just because she earned a cutie mark. How could you?
Apple Bloom yelled at the zombie pony, trying to seem brave. In truth, she was scared out of her wits. Another voice broke the silence from behind her.
Please, stay with us. We'll never let the same happen to you.
Apple Bloom twirled to face this new voice. Another zombie pony was standing directly behind her. This one was taller than the three-leaf zombie, and its skull was more square than rounded. Time did not age this one well. There was nearly no flesh left on it at all. Apple Bloom squealed, stepping back. How did this one sneak up on her so quietly? Her rump bumped into Three Leaf, making a sickening, squishy noise as rotting flesh oozed onto her back. Apple Bloom shivered in fear and disgust. She began to feel woozy, like something was draining all of the energy right out of her. Her whole world began to spin around her as more and more energy left her body. Through her blurred vision, Apple Bloom watched the other zombie pony lean in close. It spoke in a gnarled voice, its eye holes flickering like flames.
Don't worry. You'll never become like her. We'll protect you. Forever!
The larger zombie pony lunged forward, trying to snatch Apple Bloom between its forelegs. The sudden movement snapped Apple Bloom from her stupor. She screamed and jumped away last minute, barely managing to slip through its grasp before bursting into full gallop. She ran deeper into town, hoping to escape the pair. Both zombie ponies began to stumble after her, unable to match her speed. They opened their grisly mouths and let out a sickening wail. Apple Bloom had managed to get to the town center before hearing the gruesome moan. After it faded, another zombie pony began to uproot itself near the town well. Its skull turned toward Apple Bloom the second it was free from its earthly prison. Apple Bloom ran past it, ducking under a slow, sweeping strike as she passed. She stopped short at a massive wall of rocks that had been piled between her and the pathway out. It stretched the entire length of the town square and it was far too high to climb over. The zombie pony was slowly walking toward her, eyes lit with rage. She nervously paced back and forth. How was she going to get over this? A golden light circled one of the rocks on the wall, catching Apple Bloom's attention only for a moment before quickly vanishing. She ran over to the rock, trusting the phenomena and nudging it with a hoof. It was loose! Apple Bloom shoved her shoulder against the rock, pushing at it with all the strength her little body could muster. The zombie pony was getting closer.
We'll protect you forever.
I don't want your protection!
Apple Bloom protested, but the zombie didn't care. There were only precious feet between her and it now. The rock was nearly out.
Yeah!
Apple Bloom gave the stone one last shove, finally dislodging it. She knelt down and wiggled her way through the hole, just as the zombie pony fell in a clattering of bones where she once stood. She breathed heavily. Suddenly being small was having its advantages. She barely had time to catch her breath as two more bony hooves erupted right next to her, clutching at her as she galloped away. She had made it, the end of the town. The large table that had once held the food for the party had been overturned, its contents molded and decaying in the soil. The fields that had been once so full of life were now blighted and bare. Apple Bloom shook her head. This was no time to be reminiscing. She galloped forward, the gap into the everfree forest growing wider with each step.
Please, don't leave. All we want is friendship.
Apple Bloom skidded to a halt. This new voice sounded like it was in pain. She turned to see a pair of zombie ponies standing where Roneo and Starlet once were. Something inside of her wrenched in sorrow for the two. Both their glowing eyes were set on the little filly. Maybe if she talked to them, maybe she could make it all better? She took a step forward, stopping as another thought struck her brain. Or maybe this was all just a trick. Roneo and Starlet both wobbled a little, like they were sensing her thoughts.
Please, don't leave. The others won't like it.
Now, she was sure it was a trick. Apple Bloom turned tail and made directly for the exit to the everfree forest. Before she could reach her goal, one last zombie pony began to dredge itself out of the earth between her and the path. Apple Bloom whinnied in protest. All this work just to be cut off again! She braced, preparing to charge through if it need be. Something was different about this one, though. Its body wasn't nearly as decayed as the others. In fact, she still seemed completely whole save for a few rot marks and holes in her flesh. She even still had the eyes. The zombie pony walked right up to Apple Bloom with little effort, choosing to focus its gaze on the two behind her instead.
These fools. Even in death, they just don't understand.
Her voice was clear, lacking the eerie echo the other ones possessed. Apple Bloom looked the zombie pony over. Her dirt-covered mane had a deep maroon sheen in the moonlight, and her decaying coat was patched with gray splotches. Her eyes still boiled with the same red of the others, yet Apple Bloom thought she could see a tear fall from one. The zombie pony looked right at the little filly, sighing deeply, and closing her eyes.
I should have protected her, but I made my choice. This is our everlasting punishment for our sins. It's what we deserve.
Apple Bloom reached a hoof out to Mita, patting her on the side of her foreleg.
Why did you stay?
I guess my curiosity just got the better of me. I never would have guessed this was what you were trying to protect me from. I'm so sorry.
Don't be. The ponies of this town deserve every drop of this curse, and I am no exception to that. I had the chance to stop her, to protect her, but I failed as a friend. I abandoned her when she needed me most. Now I have my own sins to bear alongside these monsters. Cursed to live my long life regret. But you can escape our fate. You aren't bound here. You still have hope.
Another tear fell, and Mita opened her eyes again, giving Applebloom a weak smile. Applebloom almost wanted to give her a hug, despite her rotting form. Their peace was interrupted as the rest of the horde caught up. Their moans and wails were unbearable, forcing Applebloom to cover her ears. Mita pulled the little filly back to her hooves, looking her in the eyes with renewed vigor. They were eyes that had been hurt, eyes that suffered and endured centuries of pain. Now, those eyes held a new feeling, one of righteous fury. Mita stared at Applebloom and spoke very clearly.
I'm done hiding, and I'm done being a scared little pony that hides from her problems. You've taught me tonight that I need to be strong, and I need to protect the ones I care about.
Mita stepped to Applebloom's side, nudging her toward the town exit.
Run, little one. Run as fast as you can. Keep running, and do not stop!
With that final command, Mita charged into the mob of zombie ponies, a stream of tears filling her eyes. With one mighty headbutt, she sent the forefront of the group scattering like bowling pins. The rest of the herd became disorganized and frantic at the sudden attack, confused that one of their own would so brazenly defy them. Applebloom ran for the tree line as the mob enveloped Mita, stopping to glance back to her savior before passing through. Zombie ponies gnawed and bit at her, but Mita would not yield. As more and more zombie ponies dogpiled the poor pony, Mita managed to pull her head out from the crowd one last time.
What are you waiting for? Run for your life!
Applebloom nodded and galloped off into the forest, suppressing her own sadness for the sacrifice Mita gave her. Oh, she wished she could have brought Mita with her, wished she didn't have to leave her to that fate. The ever-free forest was alive with movement. Wails and moans of zombie ponies echoed through the trees. Every bush was her enemy, every turn yielding nothing but more skeletons. The forest grew darker with every minute, the moonlight extinguished by the thick canopy once more. Applebloom counted her blessings that zombie ponies' eyes glowed, or she would never have seen them coming in this darkness. In the distance, Applebloom could see a patch of moonlight ahead of her. She was almost to the thicket. Abruptly, a slimy sensation wrapped itself around one of her hind legs. She screamed in horror. A zombie had managed to latch itself to her. The familiar draining sensation began to pour over her again as the zombie opened its mouth.
We'll protect you forever.
The zombie didn't get a chance to finish, as Applebloom brought her free back hoof into the zombie's skull. The adrenaline from her scare had nearly doubled her strength, as her little hoof cracked the bones of the zombie's face. The creature released its grip, and her energy came surging back. Applebloom charged headlong into the thicket, her heart still pounding from her encounter. She spun around, looking for her next path. But there was none. Nothing. Every part of the woods had closed in around her, leaving only the moonlight and the moaning of her pursuers. She slumped to the ground, heart sinking into her chest. After all she'd done, all the trials and tribulations, the only thing left now was to wait for demise. She started to cry.
I just want to go home!
She screamed into the darkness, burying her face into her forehoofs to blot out her tears. Applebloom's sobbing slowed just long enough to hear it, or rather, not hear it. All of the moans and growls that were pursuing her had suddenly ceased, leaving nothing but quiet. She looked up, raising a brow in confusion. What happened to all the zombies? As she wondered this, a new sound broke the silence, a sound like that of clopping hooves. Applebloom leapt back as a golden glow erupted underneath her. In the dirt sat a pair of hoof prints bathed in a golden light. As the clopping sound continued, the prints began to move as well, etching a path directly into the brush in front of her. Applebloom blinked, confounded by this turn of events. She started following the hoof prints, pushing herself through the brush and trees as the trail bent and swayed between them. Then, finally, it stopped. Apple Bloom wasn't sure where she was. She had gone so deep in the woods that darkness made it almost impossible to see. Before Apple Bloom could take another step, a golden light pierced through the darkness. Apple Bloom covered her eyes at first, lowering her hoof to behold a familiar mare standing before her. She was gray, with a blonde mane streaked with gold. Her eyes gleamed with a golden light. The ghostly pony hovered there in front of her, smiling.
Hi!
Hello?
Apple Bloom hesitated. The ghost pony's happiness softened into a glum look.
I'm sorry I dragged you into this. I was just curious.
Oh, don't be sad. I don't blame you. I was just as curious.
Apple Bloom tried to not seem apprehensive. The ghost pony smiled again.
My name is Ruby. What's yours?
Apple Bloom.
That's a nice name. So glad to have met you, Apple Bloom.
A low, moaning sound was growing in the distance. Ruby turned in midair, looking off into the woods.
Your cutie mark is a magnifying glass?
Apple Bloom asked as Ruby's flanks came into view. Ruby turned back to her with glee.
Yes. Turns out I'm really good at finding things. And I finally understand what that means, too.
I'm so sorry for what happened to you. Those townsponies did such a terrible thing to you.
Don't be sorry, Apple Bloom. If anything, pity them.
Ruby floated effortlessly through the air as she explained, leaving a fading trail of golden sparkles behind her. She twirled, upside down, directly above Apple Bloom, never breaking her smile.
They knew what they were doing was wrong, and they paid the price for their actions.
But they murdered you! How can you forgive him so easily?
Apple Bloom found Ruby's cheerful demeanor almost contagious, but she felt anger for what fate had befell her. Ruby sighed and twirled around again, dropping to the forest floor next to Apple Bloom. She placed a hoof on Apple Bloom's shoulder. Surprisingly, it felt very warm and comforting to the little filly.
It does no good to dwell on the mistakes of others, Apple Bloom. The ponies of Sunnytown were acting out of fear and felt no remorse for what they did. The curse put on them by the Everfree Forest can be broken, but only through atonement.
So then why don't you just make them feel sorry for what they did?
Making some pony feel sorry for their mistakes isn't the same, little one. Unless they can find reason to be sorry, then their restitution is meaningless.
The moaning turned to a rustling of leaves and clopping of hooves as 4 zombie ponies came into view at the edge of the forest. They didn't seem to notice Ruby or Apple Bloom yet. Ruby knelt down close to Apple Bloom, bathing her in the light from her glowing golden eyes. Her smile was intoxicating. It made Apple Bloom unafraid.
Don't worry. I'm going to find you a way out of this. I promise.
With those last words, Ruby's form began to fade away, leaving Apple Bloom alone in the darkness. The zombie ponies had all turned toward her and were shambling closer and closer. Apple Bloom stood her ground, closing her eyes and waiting. All 4 zombie ponies were now directly over her. Their rotting stench nearly made Apple Bloom gag. The group all leaned down, preparing a coup de grace. Twilight Sparkle sputtered and moaned as she pushed her way through the underbrush. The forest had gone completely dark since night fell, and she could only see as far ahead as the light on her horn would allow her.
Apple Bloom! I gave that little filly one very simple instruction. Stay put and don't wander off. Then what does she do? Exactly the opposite. I mean, how hard is it to stay still for 10 minutes?
Twilight grumbled to herself as she pushed aside more brambles. She yelped as a particularly nasty sticker bush stuck to her leg. Twilight's horn glowed pale purple as her magic carefully plucked the bush's prickles from her coat.
I swear, if I find that little filly, she's going to wish she was still lost in the woods.
Twilight cursed loudly to the forest. A growling noise in the distance caused the purple unicorn to shrink back.
Oh, I hope she's okay.
Twilight pressed on, her fear for Apple Bloom's safety growing more and more. She tried calling out to the little filly.
Apple Bloom! Where are you? Oh, I should have never brought her. Applejack will never forgive me if anything happens to her. Wait, what's that?
A small, golden sphere bobbed back and forth between the trees in front of the unicorn. She rubbed her eyes to make sure she wasn't seeing things. Twilight took a step closer, and the orb bobbed back deeper away from her. The mayor heard a faint voice coming from the direction of the light.
I just want to go home.
Twilight recognized the voice immediately. It was Apple Bloom, and she sounded like she was hurt. The purple unicorn reared up and charged forward in a panic. The bobbing golden light kept pace with Twilight as she threw herself through the bushes and brambles. She ran through the pain, the sounds of Apple Bloom's sobs her only focus. The orb that guided her suddenly vanished, leaving Twilight stranded in the dark. She stamped a hoof in frustration, straining to hear Apple Bloom's cries. The forest was silent.
No! I won't lose her!
Twilight called out to the darkness as she braced herself. Sparks began to fly from her horn as she conjured a large ball of white light. The magic grew bigger and brighter, lighting up the whole area. With a jerk of her head, Twilight sent the orb flying off in the distance in front of her. It happened all so fast. Apple Bloom had been standing there, completely defiant against her zombified attackers. They had all lunged at her in unison, but none of them managed to even touch her. Something loud and bright had exploded over top her and the surrounding forest, illuminating the whole area as if the sun itself was shining overhead. All around Apple Bloom lay the crumbled bones of defeated zombie ponies, their remains slowly melting back into the earth from whence they came. The little filly heard a familiar voice call out for her in the distance.
Apple Bloom? Apple Bloom, where are you?
Apple Bloom hopped into light. She knew that voice. Twilight Sparkle pushed her way through one of the bushes. She looked like a total wreck. Her breathing was labored, and her whole coat was covered in mud and briars. The unicorn spotted Apple Bloom immediately by her large bow, calling out to her again.
Apple Bloom! Oh, Apple Bloom, there you are! Thanks, Celestia, I found you!
Twilight!
Apple Bloom squeaked, embracing her savior with both forehoofs. Twilight staggered under the sudden hug, but quickly rightened herself with a smile.
What in the name of Equestria are you doing out here in the woods? Didn't I tell you to stay put?
I know, Twilight. I'm sorry I wandered off.
Okay. Let's just get out of this creepy place. Who knows what kind of stuff is lurking in the woods?
Twilight murmured, quickly leading Apple Bloom back the way she'd came. She breathed a sigh of relief as the pair made their way back. Apple Bloom remained silent for the rest of the trip out. She thought about telling Twilight all about her adventure, but decided that it might be best to save it for later. It only took the pony pair minutes to reach the end of the Everfree Forest. The Ponyville countryside was covered in moonlight now, the sun fully set. Apple Bloom and Twilight trotted merrily away from the forest, heading in the direction of town. Apple Bloom paused as Twilight pressed on. She felt like something was calling out to her. She turned back to look at the Everfree Forest, catching just the faintest glimmer of gold amongst the tree trunks. Ruby's ghost was floating just under the canopy, wearing a smile on her face. She waved a hoof at Apple Bloom, and Apple Bloom happily waved back. Just as the two finished their goodbye, a second glow began to rise next to Ruby. This one had a faintly red aura about it, and her eyes glowed with a soft maroon sheen. Mita's ghost tapped her friend on the shoulder, smiling weakly as Ruby spun around to face her. Ruby's ghost leapt and twirled with excitement, latching onto Mita in a loving embrace. Apple Bloom felt a tear drop from her eye as she watched the pair reunite, a feeling of utter joy filling her heart. Ruby and Mita both faced Apple Bloom and waved again, gleefully drifting back into the Everfree Forest. Before the two lights from the ghostly ponies faded, Apple Bloom could clearly hear both their voices call out to her.
See you later, friend.